condition assessment of past South Water Management District restoration projects. And this is part of the next slide.
Oh,
That's okay.
it switched here.
It takes a while for, yeah, okay. To brief the committee about the assessment platform developed by the Water Management District to evaluate the SWIM project success. And there's a whole bunch of connections there. Goes to the public lands, public conservation assessment to protect, restore, create, and native plants, animals, communities, including appropriate management activities. Mark, take it away.
Hello everyone, I'm Mark Walton. I'm with the SWIM program at the South Florida Water Management District. And this is really an update on an effort we've been working on for a few years now, probably 2-3 years, to really go back in time and look at some of the restoration projects that our program has completed, either district initiated projects or projects that we're cooperatively funded with other entities. So there's really two components to this. The title talks about our condition assessments, but there's also a database we're trying to compile of all of our projects to really provide a tool for us to go back in time and look at these. And one of the drivers for that is that we've been around doing projects since 1987 in the section, and we had Tom Rees on the presenting a few presentations back. He was one of our early SWIM members. We had another person called Brant Henningson, which many of you probably know, and they were really gurus of the ecological restoration field, and we've had sort of generational change, and a lot of the records of what they've done were back in the 80s and 90s. They're in boxes of paper plans and projects, and they're not really that accessible. We can go and get them from our archives, but they're not really at hand when we've got information requests come in, or when we, as the next generation of practitioners, need to understand what we've done previously and how can we follow in their footsteps and do good projects. So next slide. So as I said, there's two sides to this coin, the geodatabase and the site assessment, and you can see they conceived to work together to become the adaptive management framework. So for our geodatabase, it's stored in the ArcGIS database and then put up into ArcGIS Online. We bring together lots of different sources of project information, things like project plans, metrics, both costs and benefits, how many acres were restored, what type of projects, how cost effective was it, how many acres of particular habitat, and we put that into a relational data set, so where we can look at different data sets and have them talk to each other, which makes it very easy to filter it, makes it easy to query, and as hopefully we'll demonstrate later, we can present as dashboards and web applications to make that visually appealing and usable. That's really what we're trying to do, is make this information usable, not just for us as a section and as a district, but for a lot of you who are doing other projects out there, or looking at research and trying to work out what's been done in the area. The district has been involved in a lot of restoration over the years, so we're trying to give all of you a tool as well that we can tap into. The site assessments, getting back to that, really what became obvious is that when we look back some of these past projects 10, 20, 30 years ago, a lot of times we might specify a particular timeline in the contract where we in the construction, maybe there's 2, 3, 5 years of maintenance, and then it goes back often to the cooperators to perpetually maintain that over time. What became obvious is we didn't know if that was actually happening. Sometimes we would sort of hear secondhand that, that place, drove past that the other day, that doesn't look good. So really it's part of the motivation here is just to put some eyes on some of these projects and say, did it work? Is it still restored? Oftentimes we'll have we'll have metrics saying since 1987 we've restored 15,000 acres of land. How much of that is still restored? So was our planting successful? We removed so many acres of Brazilian pepper, or we planted these. Is it still there? Has it been maintained? And is that investment that the district has made, taxpayer money, being protected? And importantly, is that feedback sort of things. What can we do better for the next project? How can we make sure that when we spend this limited kitty of money, that it's sustained? And next slide, please. So that brings us to the assessments. So we started off going out to 81 sites around Tampa Bay. This was kind of our first wading into the water, so to speak, of this. It's not a quantitative study. It's really going and putting the eyes on these sites and coming up with some criteria that is good to look at. How can we tell if these projects are doing what they said? So we've expanded that. Last year, we looked at, or over last year, this year, we looked also at 40 sites, mostly in the southern counties, so around here. And this year and into next year, we have another 35 sites planned. So what we intend to do is to go and look at each site every 4 years. So roughly 25% of our restoration projects we want to hit every year. And the assessment methodology we took from the UMM. So it's essentially a qualitative observational type project where we will look at a suite of indicators and look for visual cues on the ground. And we designed that to get fairly quickly, 1, 2, 3 of these in a day. And what's really important with restoration, and particularly a lot of restoration we've done, is we don't always expect these restoration projects to become pristine habitats in the future. Oftentimes they are conceived for particular ecological functions, as Dr. Douglas was talking about. Maybe they're for erosion control, maybe they're for sort of regrade hydrologic connectivity, or holding water back, stormwater pollution. There's a whole suite of different goals that go into restoration, and they don't all do the same thing. So when we're looking at these projects, it's really good to, it's really critical to actually know what were the expectations. And that's actually some of the information that oftentimes has been, I won't say lost, but been forgotten over time. What were we trying to do here? And that's where the GEA database, trying to pull together all the different pieces of information that went to that project, plans and write-ups and descriptions and so forth, really help us to do our assessment. It helps us as the next generation practitioners to go back in time and put ourselves in the minds of who was conceiving these projects. So we do that, then we go out and we really look at a suite of indicators, and really the question is this what we expected? It's fairly simple. We're not doing a lot of measurement per se. We're conceptualizing what those goals were and go and see if that actually materialize. And like the UMM, the mitigation assessment methodology, we have a suite of questions, and they're graded on different levels. And we load that into a survey 123 template as well. So go to the next slide. I've hidden my computer here, wondering why I wasn't going. Okay, so yeah, this is sort of stuff that we would look at in our geodatabase before we go into the field. You know, already sort of spoke at depth of that, so we can move to the next one. And in the field, that's what we're dealing with. That's on the tablet. We have a suite of pages we load in. The idea is we can get out there in the field and do this quite quickly. There's different efficiencies for using the Survey 123, which is if you don't know it, it's an ArcGIS or Estuary, I should say, platform for mobile mapping. And you can see some of the highlighted efficiencies out in the field. So if you haven't played with it, I definitely recommend looking at it. You drop down text and we can link to different information sources. One of the important things that we do for our assessment is in the field, we can delineate different areas that we are looking at, different areas that we are assessing, because we've got a Robinson Preserve over there, and that's just a mock mark up there. But you can see that that's a big site, and the goals for one part of that site may be quite different to another part of the site. So we can mark up the different areas that we are assessing on a given in a given time, and weight those towards an overall project score. Next slide. Okay, so what are some of the indicators we are looking at? Got Alligator Creek, one of the Alligator Creek, the Alligator Creek down this way. Project is a background there, but we're looking, like the UMAN, we're looking at three main areas. I'm going to go backwards here and start with the location and landscape support. What that looks at is what's around our site, what shape is our site, how big is our site. That's the important determinant on how successful your site's going to be. We do that initially as a GIS-based mapping exercise. We use a very similar methodology to the landscape intensity index that DEP uses, which is based on a 100-metre buffer around the site. We look at the different land use classes, and then we come up with score out of 10 for that. And it means it's well connected to other sites, it's connected to other natural areas around it. Usually it's got a good size and shape that minimises those edge effects. And then one is the opposite, where you're going to have more impact from what's around it. When we're at the field, we'll adjust that. If we're seeing the fact that it's mostly surrounded by natural areas, but there happens to be one stormwater culvert that comes into the site that's having the outsized effect on that project, it'll affect the score on that. Our water environment will go up to the top left there. So the types of things we're looking at there: surface water flows, levels, connectivity. So Alligator Creek, the background picture, that phase involved a lot of filling in ditches and bringing that grade back up to allow sheet flow across the site. So we might look at, are we seeing indicators that water is moving across that landscape? We will see that in terms of the vegetation assemblage. We'll see that in terms of, is there evidence of the area being wet when it's meant to be wet? Erosion and sedimentation. So if we're looking for areas of sheet flow, we're making sure that we see evidence that there is scour and channels and so forth. Soil infiltration, again, are areas wet that should be wet or dry when they should be dry. Water quality, again, we're looking what we can see in the field. Does water look the right colour? Does it smell? Is it moving? Does it look stagnant? And we'll sort of have some guidance in our protocols for what to look at as well. And any stormwater infrastructure, if there's culverts or they're meant to be connected areas, are they blocked? Yeah, simple things like that. And so really just these simple observations can often tell us a lot about a project area. The vegetation community, we'll estimate the relative cover of native and exotic species. We do a lot of enhancement projects, a lot of exotic removals in the uplands. So that's we'll look at what plants we're seeing. Are we seeing a good percentage of the planted species, low percentage of the ones we're meant to get rid of? Species diversity, recruitment. Are we seeing different age stands of the planted material, or is it just what got planted initially and that's it? Again, it tells us a lot about, is it proceeding the way we would hope that project was going to proceed over the long term? And in some cases, there may have been structural habitat put in as well, or topographic features. Are they doing what they will hope to do? So across all that, we will look at, we'll fill out whether these different indicators are within the realms of expectation, slightly departed, or just completely inconsistent. And really then we use a weighted evidence type approach to give a score out of 10. And again, this is where we have to think about our project goals. Some of those may be less important than others. So there is a lot of scope for making decisions in the field and in advance of going to the field for what we're going to key in on. And at the end of that process, we get a score of 10 for each of the categories, and for each of the sections that we have, we're scored, and the temple will actually use the weights we've assigned and calculate the bottom line score. So next slide. The advantage of putting all this into survey 1, 2, 3 and using that Estuary is we can bring that very quickly into a dashboard and start to have that information presentable and ready to showcase. We also have, I'll do a demo, or hopefully I'll do a demo. You were able to get into that? Yeah. Just have it on in the background somewhere. And I'll show you sort of the information that we have there. While we're going, we'll have our next slide as well. So this also feeds into our larger geo database, which we also have a web application for, and that again we can open that one up as well when we get to it. Again, we have a whole lot of widgets and tools in there for it to really get key into the data. So we'll get into that in just a moment. Next slide. All right, so exploring observation. So a little bit of what we've been seeing out there across a few projects, and these really observations. They're not findings. This is really a project by project type assessment, and these are just some things that have jumped out as we've done it. They're not grounding granite, statistically significant. They're just some observations we've come across. So, and some of these, maybe it's supporting what we already know in a lot of cases. So really, the picture on our left there is some of our better performing sites from the last round. So what we can see is a lot of them were hydrologic connection or wetland creation type projects. So had good use of water to control vegetation as well. The other thing you'll notice about some of those sites, we're talking Alligator Creek, so in the preserve, Shalham Preserve down there, and Coral Creek. We also got there South Creek. These are fairly big sites. They're big. They're well managed. They've got a plan of management. They're regularly managed. In some cases, they're using the whole suite of management tools available: fire, spraying. They have blocks set up for it. So that definitely is significant. What we also find is that a lot of those big public sites, going back to some of our earlier assessments, the sites that are showcase preserves do well, because there is visibility on it. Conversely, unmanaged sites or ones that are rarely managed, often have gone backwards in that time. Something that wasn't so much evident in this suite of assessments, but have been in some of our early ones up in Tampa Bay. We did a lot of narrow shoreline projects, and a lot of them haven't done as well as we would hope. And actually, you could probably tic-tac go forward and back a few times, because you can see some of the lowest scoring ones as we go. Go back.
Okay.
Backwards. So if you go, there you go. Because that was an updated one.
Okay.
All right, we'll see that in a second. A lot of our shoreline and narrow projects really susceptible to edge effects. On the upland edge of some of those shoreline projects, we get a lot of management of parkland that butts right up against plantings. Sometimes the mower might take out some of the plants. Sometimes the mower might just kick the grass clippings into that area. On the shoreward side, some of our shoreline projects, we find that perhaps the tow armoring of some of those shorelines maybe isn't working. Maybe wave energy or sea level rise is making it so that the energy is actually hitting higher up that slope. It's probably more to look at with those projects and how we can do them better. So that's some early observations. Something that I'm not sure I like how I wrote this, but the sites we did last year down here, a lot of them obviously were impacted by Hurricane Ian. So we got to have a look at some of these sites afterwards. And what stood out to me, and probably a lot of you down here lived and breathed this, it was very patchy, the impacts. Some areas were heavily impacted, but some hardly any. And what also stood out is that some of the sites that were impacted, it seemed to Jennifer's point earlier that more sites were in better condition, were more resilient to it than sites that weren't in good condition to begin with. So if you had a good assemblage of native plants there, it tended to do better than those that didn't. The other thing that jumped out is looking at the different scoring categories there. So you can see I've got the red there being the location landscape, and then the blue water and the green vegetation. It really starts that the location and landscape score is a good predictor of where these sites are going to end up being. Those are in prime natural areas and surrounded by natural areas. I think it plays out fairly well there, that their other scores tend to match that. So it's probably something good for us to think about when we're conceiving projects, of what is a reasonable expectation of success for the projects. Let's skip to the next slide. Let's see what we've got in store there. Okay, so we can see that the flip side there, some of the lower scoring sites, and it's a bit hard to read the writing, apologies for that, but some of those narrow creek projects and shoreline projects, again, see the low location and landscape score also corresponds to those low scores in vegetation. So they're in that sort of realm that we would consider kind of a moderate to a low function based on the goals that project had. And again, probably reinforces some of the other points I made before about these aren't our bigger preserves. They're, as I said, lower, they're smaller and narrower sites. So some lessons learned, lessons identified, supported, relearned, whatever we want to call them. A lot of these restoration sites, I think back in the day, there might have been a thought that
We'll implement it. We'll kickstart the process. We'll get the vegetation in there, and eventually they're gonna look after themselves. I'm not sure that's ever going to happen with these. Yeah, so when we're doing this, I think we've got to be in it for the long haul. Everything is changing. We've got different climates. We've got as this area becomes more tropicalized, we're going to have new threats from different species moving up. It's going to be a constant battle. Different hydrologic regimes as well, higher storms. Yeah, so we need to really be on top of it all the time. Edge effects, really important. Even on the sites that did do well, those big preserves, it really is often telling the difference between around the boundary. One of the district sites up, the rock ponds up in Tampa Bay, it can be quite a different story if you're going around the boundary trails as opposed to going through the middle. They can look quite different. So those edge effects are definitely significant. And as you can imagine, if all you've got an edge, then that site is going to struggle. And then the other thing is with some of the bigger sites down here, those in-parcels in the middle of them. They're an edge in the middle of those projects that it will be creating negative impacts as well. So I guess broader for our effort here, we talk about monitoring a lot, and everyone, whenever you go to some workshops, the need to monitor our past projects. And it's sort of a lament that no one wants to fund it. But I think just get out there and qualitatively monitoring can be effective. If you don't have anything else, or you've got a focused assessment on where you've got clear goals, qualitative monitoring is a tool. And I think we sometimes don't take as much advantage of that as we could do. But what's really important for all restoration, saying that really as we've gone through, and we're kind of learning this as we go, is you really need to understand these projects before you go out and look at them. You need to sort of dig in, do some detective work, and try and put yourself in the shoes of who came before you. Next slide.
All right. Thank you very much.
Oh,
So, sorry.
okay.
More slides.
So going forward, so really I won't dive. Where we're hoping to take this, again, is to have that geodatabase available. It's not public per se, but if you have information you want to get from us, come to us and we can share the information from that, and let you access it and talk you through it. Eventually, I'd like to do a deep dive in some of the results we're getting. Really see what plants consistently work, what planting doesn't. Something that some other things that's going forward is using this to better and protect our investment. So go in and see the contractual obligations for some of these cooperative projects being met, and if so, what can we get that being met? And as I said previously, we really want to learn from the past. So that project, that's our first swim project. So that was one of the ones we went out to. It looks nothing like that now. That was a salt marsh planting that now is covered in mangroves, but that's not so bad thing. But interesting little tidbit. Do you have time to quickly look at the two dashboards real quick?
There you go, and then you can switch between these two.
Okay, cool. So I won't go into a lot of, oops, there you go. I won't go into a lot of detail, just to, I guess, show you what we have available. So for our for our geodatabase. So yeah, we've got different charts. We can see the projects we've done by year, for instance. Right through to number of projects by water body, county, cost effectiveness. There's a whole suite of things we've put in there, acres by water body. So again, if you guys have reporting needs each year and you want to tap us to try and get some of that information, we have that there. Filters, we can filter by different planting areas and assessment timeframes, etc. So again, there's it's a useful tool. We can bring in other data to analyze against. If we zoom in a bit, geez, not that far. Get back. Reverse. So we can get in there and look at our different habitats that were restored. All those little black dots, they are actually photo points. So we can actually go in there and get a sense of what that site looks like now. And they're geolocated, so we can actually do a little bit of a ground tour if we wanted to, and look at those sites, which is it becomes really useful when we get questions out the blue about how's this site looking and that site looking. This is kind of taking a subset of that information. It's got the same kind of information, so we can look at how different sites have scored, and we can look at sub area, how the different sub areas scored. This is the actual survey questions. What goals were there? The water levels, the flow, so all those things are mentioned. Lots of comments in there as well. So it's sort of information where, if you were doing a quantitative study and you wanted to have a look at a few different sites, to scope out where you might want to put your samples, where's roughly good areas and bad areas, perhaps you could come and tap us to help you with some of those project sites. Again, if you're interested more, I know we're up against time here, so if reach out to me, I can run you through some more of that information that's there. And if you've got particular sites, those our cooperators whose sites are probably in here, I'll probably also be sending you little sort of pared down versions of this data as well for your own records. So yeah.
Well,
Thank you very much.
I have room for one question or no? Yep, one question.
Just a quick Mark. So just a parallel in our reclamation and restoration projects, we obviously end up with conservation easements over the completed restoration, and the Corps and DEP have recently included in our long-term management plan that we do 5-year updates from the baseline on that conservation easement. And that's kind of a way to trigger action if you have, hurricane tree fall and now you have the invasive exotic from that vector point, or if you, if we did an enhancement planting and there was flooding and, things like that. So we've been going back every 5 years, looking at comparing against the baseline and determining any maintenance needed. So not sure how many of these sites have conservation easements associated with them, but that long-term management plan application of a 5-year look back has been, and it goes on in perpetuity until all parties agree it's no longer necessary. So every 5 years, we're going back and looking at some of these restoration efforts we've done.
Yeah, fantastic. And for the district's property funding, we also specified a conservation easement needs to be put on that site as well. So again, it's and if we're going to sites that are cooperatively funded or were cooperatively funded, and we sort of tap for access to the site, or to let you know we're coming through. Any information that you've done, we'll definitely feed into our system as well. But I don't think you can get too much information. It really is.
Thank you very much.